My name is Lila Ormondi, and my ego is a liar. And guess what? Yours is too. I'm a combat veteran, mother, and recovering high performer. This is a show about the lies we tell ourselves, how they shape us, how they break us, and what it takes to finally let them go. Let's uncover our lies to seek the truths underneath. Because before there's clarity, there's chaos. Let's navigate it together. So don your oxygen mask and take a deep breath. Welcome to Lies My Ego Told Me. Welcome back, liars and truth seekers, to Lies My Ego Told Me. I'm Lilo, and I'm honored to launch season 2 with a true powerhouse. Today's guest is someone who made history while carrying an invisible and relentless weight. The weight of expectation, of silence, and of not having the option to fail. On September 16, 1982, Theresa Claiborne became the first Black woman to graduate from Air Force pilot training and the first in the history of U.S. military aviation. It was a milestone that should have reshaped the narrative, yet it unfolded quietly without celebration as Theresa focused on doing the work in front of her. She went on to fly KC-135 Stratotankers, serving more than 2 decades in the Air Force and reserves, and later spent 34 and a half years at United Airlines, retiring in May 2024 as a captain on the Boeing 787. Theresa did this all without fanfare, often made to believe her achievements were unremarkable, and yet through excellence, silence, responsibility, and grief, she didn't just break barriers, she carried them. Theresa, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I know, don't give up my day job.
I'm thrilled to have you, and I can't wait to just get into your story. So I'm going to ask you straight off the bat, what was the lie your ego convinced you to believe?
That lie was that I can carry the weight.
And what was the weight that you were feeling on your shoulders?
The weight of being the first, the weight of my people, all of that. There was no one that looked like me. No one. There was no one I could look up to. There was no one I could emulate. And I knew that if I did not do a good job, that others that looked like me would have a really hard row to hoe.
And what's interesting is that you didn't even know that that was a weight or even a burden that you were going to carry. And I'd really like to start your story with your youth. And I'd love to talk about your upbringing and the most important relationship that you had in your life, which was with your mom. What were the lessons that she taught you that shaped your life?
Probably one of the biggest things that she taught me was I had come home from school and I was really upset. And she looked at me and she's like, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, I'm really mad. You know, the teacher told me she was grading on a curve. And I got an 89, Mom, but she gave me a B. And my mother said, last time I looked, Theresa, a 90 and above was an A. I said, yeah, but she said she was grading on a curve, so she should have given me an A minus. And there was only one other person that scored higher than me. And she said, no, Theresa, do A work and get an A. And that's where she left it. My mother knew, because she continued on with other things like, you just can't be average. You have to be twice as good in order to be received as just being as good as other people. And, you know, it's pretty much held true. I don't know how other mothers teach, but I know that Black mothers say that to their children. I've heard from other people too that their mother had said it. So, but for the Black community, it's like prevalent. And some people have said it's even more than twice. But it became very, very obvious that I needed to be twice as good.
Because after high school, you end up going to Sacramento State, and eventually you join Air Force ROTC to earn your commission. And while you're there, you decide that you're going to pursue pilot training, even though you barely met the height requirement and you needed waivers to justify your height qualification, because on a good day, upside down with low gravitational pull, you're 5'2", which is the absolute minimum standard for height, correct?
Oh, I just love the way you explain that. And at the time, that was still below the height requirement. The height requirement was 5'4". The height requirement was 5'4". So I needed a waiver, but I didn't actually know that. So, you know, the die was cast when I went to ROTC, and with ROTC, if you're a 2-year student, like you go your junior year, then you have to go to a 6-week training camp, kind of a boot camp type thing. And we got a ride on a T-37. I got in the T-37 and that was it. I'm going to be a pilot. Even though my degree was media communications, I thought, oh, I'm going to go into broadcasting. Oh, I'm going to have a wonderful life. But once I got in that airplane, it was like, that's it. That's it. I want to be a pilot. So I came back from ROTC training camp and my commander said, what do you want to do? Theresa, I have your report here. The Air Force likes you. And I'm really surprised because I had lots of demerits for not, the bed wasn't, you couldn't like drop a quarter on it and it wouldn't bounce back up. But the Air Force liked me, according to my commander there. And so when I get back, he says, what do you want to do? And they like you. So do you like the Air Force? Do you want to join? I'm like, yes. He goes, well, what do you want to do? I said, oh, I want to be a pilot, of course. He said, oh, well, they've already given out the pilot slots for your year of graduation. I go, what do you mean they've already given out the pilot slots? He says, well, the Air Force is only training 10 women a year. I said, what? He said, yeah, 10 women a year. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, okay. Well, I guess I'll be a public affairs officer then. And he said, okay. And so that's the way it remained until about halfway through the junior year. And they said, well, the women are working out okay. So we think we're going to increase it from 10 to 30. So any women that you all have in your units, if they're interested in going to pilot training, they need to go and take the AFOQT pilot and navigator portion, and we're going to have a board meet on it. And they did that. I did that, went and took everything and scored high enough that I got selected on the board to get a pilot slot. So then it was like, okay, this is all great. But the funny thing is that when I was having the physical, the doctor says, I'm looking at your stuff here and it says you're 5'2". And I go, yes, sir. He goes, did you know you have to be 5'4"? And I'm like, So he goes in and he says to the airman, he said, hey, when she gets to pilot training, she'll have to do another physical. So do you have a problem with changing this? And when she gets there, she'll get a physical and they'll give her a waiver because we are giving waivers. Do you have a problem changing this? And he said, no, sir, I don't. And so he changed it so that I could get the pilot training. And when I got there, they said, somebody of short stature dinged a wing the other day. And so we're no longer going to give waivers. You've got to be kidding me. So they said, I sat down while my class went to the flight line because I'm waiting to get this waiver. I'd done everything that I needed to do, which was go out to an airplane, sit in a T-38 on the runway and push it up to mil power and hold the brakes. And I did all that. I did everything I needed to do. So everything with all the boxes were signed off and checked off. And I'm still sitting there waiting for this waiver to come through. I reached out to the man who commissioned me and I said, Colonel Azuma, I'm still waiting for this waiver. And he said, let me make a phone call. So he called to the Surgeon General's office and talked to a friend. And the friend said, you know what? Her paperwork's right here in my inbox. And guess what? We're not going to give any more waivers for now. So she needs to go in and get remeasured. And so I did. And at that point, I understood what I needed to do. And by any means necessary, I stood on the balls of my feet. 5'4". It sounds terrible. And people are like, oh, I can't believe you did that. Well, I'd already done everything else to get the waiver. There was no shame in my game to roll up onto the balls of my feet and be 5'4".
And for context, because you said, there's only 10 women that were allowed initially. In 1976 is when women were actually permitted to enter into Air Force pilot training. Limited to 10 initially and then open to 30. But this was a pipeline that was producing thousands of pilots per year with historically high attrition rates, right? And you finally entered in 1981 as one of those 30. But it wasn't until you graduated and earned your wings that you realized that you were the first and only Black woman to earn that rating. How did you find out?
Actually, it was a gentleman that was in ROTC with me. He was prior enlisted. And I think I was about 3 weeks from graduating. And he calls me up and he says, you're the first. And I said, the first what? He goes, you're the first Black woman pilot. I've done the research and you're the first. I'm like, whoa. And so I checked with the public affairs office and they said, yeah, you are the first. And they were uber excited. And they sent out releases, press releases, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, they couldn't believe it. I mean, this is 1982. It's like, we can't believe this. She's the first. And it's like, well, she is. So, yeah, that's how I found out. It's 3 weeks before graduation. And honestly, Lilo, I'm happy that I didn't find out to the very end. That would have been it would have been a lot more pressure to have on me to know that I was representing the entire Black women. It would have just been too much.
I mean, pilot training, any military training is rigorous anyways. What do you think that kind of burden would have put on you? Just the pressure alone?
Yeah, the stress of it. I remember when I said I was going to go in the military, my dad looked at me like I was crazy. And he goes, what do you want to do that for? You have no business in the military. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, because you don't know how to take orders. I said, okay, well, that's fine because I'm going as an officer. I'm going to give the orders. But it was just that whole thing of joining the military was a big deal for me. And then to find out that now I'm the first, that was just a lot. It was just a lot. And I knew that, okay, now they are really watching.
What's interesting though is that you were carrying the weight no matter what, right?
Yes.
You were carrying the weight of being short statured, having to deal with somebody who just crashed an airplane because of a height requirement. So you're carrying that weight without knowing it. You're also carrying the weight of being one of 30 women, which was there no matter what. And now you're carrying the weight of being the first Black female to do so. The weight was there anyways.
Exactly. Interesting. And like I said, a happy circumstance. I'm glad I did not know until the very end.
You talked about press releases going out and the alert for media going out, but your graduation, this event wasn't actually covered by media at all, except for the base public affairs. Tell me about the story of that, because there were deliberate decisions made by people
Right.
to limit the exposure of your achievement.
Right. You know what? Public affairs, when they sent those releases out, they had positive feedback from every single publication. They were excited to tell me, oh, Time Magazine, U.S. News and World Report, everybody wants to come and cover this. And I was like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden, I heard through the grapevine, never got this official word, but I heard it through the grapevine. And I heard it from the commander's secretary of all people. And they know everything that's going on the base. Secretaries do. And it was said that the commander was like, she's no more important than anyone else in this graduating class. So I don't want anybody on my base. Well, Ebony Magazine said, well, okay, we can't come. And public affairs said, well, we can write a story for you. We can take pictures and write a story for you and send it to you. They said, we'll take it because this is important to us. And even if we can't come and cover it in the way we want to cover it, we'll take whatever you have. And so that's pretty much what happened. Guess what? It wasn't even in the base paper. And if you think about publications on the base, I mean, the majority of the base paper is who's having a garage sale. There's not a whole lot of news that's in those papers, but there was no mention. I do remember that there was mention of one of the graduates who had tried out for the Olympic racquetball team. Okay. So that was mentioned. Things like that were mentioned, but no mention of the first Black woman pilot in the United States, in the history of the United States Air Force, is graduating. No mention. I don't know what you call that besides what it was.
Do you think that was about the culture of creating a collective identity or not being unique? Or do you think it was a way to minimize you?
Minimize. I didn't want to believe that, but I could not see any other way to look at that. Maybe the commander did not want extra people on base, That's the way I have to look at it. That's the way I have to look at it, because even if they just had people come on and interview me separately, maybe they get file footage for the graduation. Nobody had to know. The rest of this graduates didn't have to know that I was getting some kind of extra coverage. But they didn't even allow that to happen. So I looked at it for what it was. This is how it was to me. And unfortunately, I internalized that, because in a lot of ways I kind of shut down and went, okay, well, he says it's not important. Okay, I guess it's not important. So I didn't wear it on my sleeve, but then again, that wasn't my personality anyway, to wear something on my sleeve like that. I never walked into a room and professed, here I am. I didn't do that. So, I just live with it.
You rationalize that in an interesting way. What do you think it does to someone, and what did it do to you when something that is so historic is actively minimized? When Ebony Magazine did like a full page spread on you, and it mattered to your community there, but it didn't matter to the big community that you signed up to join.
You know what? Ebony Magazine was not a household magazine, right?
Right.
So a lot of people did not know. They just didn't know. Black people knew, the ones who got the publication. And, after I got to my first duty station, it leaked out. It came out in the article. I graduated in September. The article came out in the January issue in 1983. And so people saw it, and there were people that did talk about it. And so then I was approached in my squadron. Hey, are you? And I'm like, yeah. And we had like in the back room, they had like a little scrapbook thing, and somebody put that article in there, but I never talked about it. I never said anything about it. I just chose to not talk about it because, I always felt like, Theresa, my mother told me, do A work and get an A. So I'm just going to continue being me. I'm going to try to be the best doggone co-pilot I can be. Then I'm going to upgrade to aircraft commander. I'm going to be the best doggone aircraft commander. And it's just going to continue like that. People don't need to know that I was the first. Besides, I want them to judge me based on just me. I'm not asking for any favors. So yeah, I internalized that though, and did not, like I said, I didn't walk in wearing that on my shoulder, and there were audiences that I probably should have done that with. I did get the hint after a while, once I got off active duty and I went to the reserves, I would get lots of requests. The public affairs office would send me out to schools to talk to students, and I loved doing it. But you know what? It was funny because all the schools I was going to were predominantly white schools. And I finally said, what are we doing here? And they said, oh, everybody they want to hear from you. They want to, they know who you are. And I said, I'm not boycotting this, but I need to go to some black schools.
Right.
The schools that are predominantly black. And they said, well, we're not getting requests from them. Then it was my quest to reach out to these schools and say, look, you don't know what it's going to take for a child to get tuned in, to figure out what they need to do and why they need to do what we're telling them that they should do. Maybe just me showing up and telling the story of not being really great in math and not being really great in science, but realizing that that was something that I should have known. Maybe that's what's going to get them tuned in and get them to do what they need to do. So that was my quest after that.
But it's important because there is a pattern in aviation history that we've seen, especially with the contributions of the Black community to aviation. For example, in 1921, Bessie Coleman, she had to move from the US to France in order to become a pilot. And then she became the first Black woman to earn a pilot license, and she became the first Black person to earn an international rating. Her story is that she had to leave her home country just to learn how to fly. And earlier than that, Eugene Bullard, who was the first Black fighter pilot in World War I, he flew combat missions for France because he was denied the opportunity to serve in the US. And he became a highly decorated war hero, celebrated by his adopted country. and then forgotten by his homeland. When you hear those stories and you compare them to yours, do you see the connection between being allowed to fly and being allowed to be seen? Because it sounds like you are being seen or being put in front of certain audiences and not in front of others.
Precisely. That's why I feel like it really wasn't a mistake. It really was minimizing me when I graduated from pilot training. It was that pervasive attitude of no big deal. We don't need to make any deal about this. So what? Even if you look back at women with only 10 slots a year, what is that? Women had already proven that we could fly airplanes with the WASP. Come on. We'd already proven that. Women had already proven that we have what it takes.
Right.
Yet they put us through those paces again. Tuskegee Airmen, same thing. Oh, they can't fly. Eleanor Roosevelt gets up in an airplane with Chief Anderson and comes down and professes, okay, they can fly.
Right.
What is that?
Yeah.
It continues, and it continues today. Why is it that women are always asked, or it's presumed that we're not qualified, or that the standards have been lowered in order for us to do what we do? No, they weren't lowered. As a matter of fact, guess what? We had to be twice as good.
Right.
That's
You did. You do.
Yeah.
I was there too.
You know what that feels like. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting because we talk about how few women there were then. There still is a very tiny percentage of women that are in aviation. And for context, for the demographic that we're really talking about here, less than 1/10 of 1% of all pilots in the United States are Black women, with fewer than 200 Black women holding commercial or military licenses nationwide, even though there's hundreds of thousands of pilots overall. So knowing that now, how does that change the way you understand what you were carrying back then, especially without even knowing you were the first?
It makes me feel like I wish that I had not internalized what I was being told, that it wasn't important, so that maybe I could have gotten out there and done a better job. It really does. I think it's just because of social media now that there's even as many as there are. You know, one of the things that I've also talked about was the fact that, and I'm sure you know this, but there were no Black women WASP.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
Right.
You know, let's just keep talking about the way it was, and honestly, kind of the way it is, because we still hear the stories of Black women at some of these aviation schools, and nobody studying with them, being made to feel like they're not as good, actually being told maybe you should find something else to do. Like, okay, I just busted one ride. Who doesn't every once in a while not do good on a ride?
Right.
I mean, we've all been there. Nobody's perfect. So this is something that we just got to keep talking about and keep impressing upon people that, I have this thing that I say, I am qualified. We are qualified. And
Right.
there are a lot of folks that do not want to give us the credit for it, but we are qualified. We are overqualified.
Right. And speaking of qualified, you leave pilot training, you go to your first unit and you're flying KC-135 tankers. You're qualified in your aircraft. You're next in line to upgrade to aircraft commander. At this point, you're very well aware of your standing, your capability, and you are also aware of your historical significance. There's got to be some kind of exhaustion in that kind of excellence, that continued excellence, because now you're not just flying for yourself. You're flying for everybody that's coming behind you. And you're very well aware people are watching, and that, as you alluded to, any mistake is becoming bigger than you. How heavy did that feel? And did that become a burden for you or motivation?
It was motivation for me to continue to prove myself. I don't think I ever stepped on the flight deck and didn't feel like, okay, these boys are watching, so you need to do a good job. That was always there. I was always carrying that weight. I tell you, when it got time to upgrade to aircraft commander, and everybody in the squadron kind of knew what the pecking order was. It was kind of when you came into the squadron, and did you keep your nose clean? Did you pass all your check rides? Have you accumulated the hours that you need? And are you aircraft commander material? Well, it was what I considered to be my turn. And they said, oh, we're going to send this guy to upgrade school for aircraft commander. And I remember going, how's he getting ahead of me?
Mm-hmm.
So listen, when I was younger, I was really full of piss and vinegar, right? They say that, piss and vinegar. And here I am, this little first lieutenant, and I walk into the commander's office and I said, I don't understand why you're upgrading him ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, because I'm the commander and it's my choice. And I said, well, I don't really think it's fair. Is there something I'm not doing correctly? Is there something I'm not doing right? And he's like, no. The fact of the matter is that he went to pilot training as a captain and he's coming up on his major board. And so we want to get aircraft commander on his OER. And I said, that's not my fault. And he just kind of looked at me and says, okay, thank you, Lieutenant. That's my decision.
Yeah.
And it was his decision, but he didn't know what I was carrying. He didn't know that everybody in the squadron was looking like she's going to go to aircraft commander school. She's the next in line. He had no idea what I was carrying. I mean, this guy was actually a good guy and he's trying to take care of his troops. But that weight that I was carrying said, you're next. And they did not allow me to be next. Now, was that decision all out of let's take care of him or was it she can wait? I don't know.
Yeah.
I said what I needed to say and it was over with. I went to aircraft commander school after him, but it made me now start to question maybe I'm not doing A work. Theresa, are you doing A work? Maybe you're not. They weren't telling me I wasn't doing A work, but maybe I wasn't.
You don't have the full picture, right? You don't know what the commander is deciding and for what reasons and whatever, but it must have made you feel minimized again
It did.
and
It did.
make you feel like you're not enough again.
Yeah, which makes you go either you're terrible or this is 1942 all over again, right? Or 1921. So which is it? Which is it? When I went to the reserves, and I was back in my hometown of Sacramento, the local paper, which was the Sacramento Bee, they did an article once they decided that women could go into combat. And they interviewed myself and another lady. And, I did an interview, a normal kind of interview. And, of course, they asked me things like that. How did it feel? Da, 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 this and that. And after that article ran, there was a letter to the editor from somebody in my squadron. I never knew who it was, but I tell you what, I looked at everybody in their face and wondered which one of you did that. But they said, like, you know what? I think she's walking around with a chip on her shoulder. Really? No, there's not a chip on my shoulder. I just happen to be a black woman, and I'm being told that day in and day out, not like in your face, you're a black woman, but just in the treatment. So yeah, at that point, I knew this is not something I'm making up. When I left the tanker squadron in California, I actually went out to Loring Air Force Base, and now it's getting about time for instructor pilot, and I'm coming up on my 7 years. And the commander decides, yep, we're going to send this guy to instructor school. Once again, I'm like, what? I'm next. It's like at this point, I refuse to, especially when they give me what they call the bad boy crew, people who they had problems with in the squadron, that needed extra attention. I gave them extra attention, but that included love too. I felt like I was an awesome aircraft commander, and people were telling me that I was. And so I get this crew, and it's funny because the boom operator was, I won't mention his name, but he was one of these guys that people said he was a troublemaker and he just didn't do things the way he should have. With me on my crew, he goes off to school and graduates DG. So I knew I was doing something right. And they all knew I was doing something right too. So for them to upgrade someone else to instructor before me, it struck a nerve. And so the commander, I went on TDY to the Pacific Tanker Task Force. It's like, okay, well, we're not going to send her to instructor school, but we can send her halfway around the world, and let her go do her thing with no supervision, right? It kind of didn't make sense, but so when I get back, I have a stack of papers. You'll remember this when you send people TDY, they come back and there's the orders say one thing, but sometimes you always have exceptions. And as a commander, you had to sign them so that people could be paid. So I came in with my stack of papers and I put it on his desk and I said, here you go, sir. At the bottom of the stack was me saying, I'm getting out. And he starts signing. He goes, what's this? I said, well, I'm gonna leave. I'm getting off active duty. And he said, why? And I said, you upgraded so-and-so ahead of me to instructor pilot. So there are plenty of companies out there, and I don't mean just airlines, that want an intelligent young Black woman to work for them. So it's time for me to go. And he acted offended, pissed off even. And he goes, okay, TC, I'll get to that later. I'm like, okay. And I left. And of course, I called up personnel and I said, hey, I just gave my papers to my commander. And there was a time period. You had to do it. I believe at the time you had to do it 6 months in advance. And I said, my papers are sitting in, he won't sign them. And they said, don't worry about it. The date that you put on the top, that's the date that is all important. And so a little while after that, I don't know when it was, couple months, he says, everybody who's deciding that they're getting out, I'm going to send you to the wing commander. I'm like, I guess I was supposed to be scared into taking my papers back. No, not scared. So I got sent to the wing commander, and the wing commander was a really good guy. And I go in there and I sit down. He says, TC, they sent you to me because you've decided that you want to get out. I go, yes, sir, I do. And he said, TC, tell me that this has nothing to do with upgrading to instructor pilot. And I go, it kind of does.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you know what? You can only be passed over so many times. He said, I've been asking your commander why he wasn't sending you for a while. He said, I understand. Whatever you need from me, you got it. If you need a letter of recommendation, I'll sign it. Whatever you need. I said, thank you, sir. And I left the office, and that was the end of that. Commander finally signed the paperwork. I took it to personnel, and they're like, okay, you're good to go. And I left when I had planned on leaving.
So you leave active duty, you go to the reserves, and then eventually in 1990, you get hired at United Airlines, where you end up flying for over 3 decades. And here you're not the only, and you're not the first, but you're one of a very few. And you progress through your career quietly. You're upgrading and you're eventually become a captain. And at one point, United Airlines realizes who they have on their staff, and they end up featuring you in Hemispheres magazine. And so at this point, your trajectory in your life kind of changes because you become instantly recognizable. Did that change your approach and the level of pressure to perform again?
It kind of didn't, because there were people that knew who I was. The Black pilots knew who I was. They're like, oh, yeah, that's TC or Theresa, right? But I would say the majority of the white pilots did not know. I mean, we've got 17,000 plus pilots. It's more than that now. When I retired, it was about 17,000. So Beacon is the Black business resource group at United. And the president of the organization, one of my mentors, even though she's not a pilot, she's my mentor. Somebody told her, and she's like, what? And went into the United folks and said, do you guys realize that you have living history here at United? Excuse me? Like, we have the first Black woman pilot in the Air Force flying for us and has been here flying for us for the past 30 years. You guys didn't know that, did you? And they're like, well, because like I said, I don't walk in a room wearing it on my shoulder. I do not. I don't. I'm Theresa. And then they did feature me, and I'm pretty recognizable. I think a lot of it has to do with the gray locks, but I always knew that I had to do a good job. Listen, that's part of the reason why I did not go into management, because I felt like Black women still need the standard bearer out there showing everybody that we can fly airplanes. That I felt like that was what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And so I stayed on the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Mary Jackson, who was one of the first Black female engineers at NASA, which I think more people probably know her from the movie Hidden Figures. She had to once petition a court just to attend the classes that she needed to advance in her career. And she later said that she realized that sometimes the system doesn't change by climbing higher. It changes by who survives long enough to open the door wider. When you look back now, do you see your career as a ladder or more as endurance? And do you embrace that responsibility now of being the one to open that door and hold it for others?
I do. I think it was both. Let's face it, in the commercial field, it's first officer to captain. So as far as the ladder,
It's short.
you're just kind of going up one. Yeah, you're just going up one rung. But I remained and, dealt with all the obstacles, let's say all the turbulence from A to B, in order to prove to people that, yep, Black women as a whole, yeah, they can do it. I didn't say this before, but one of the things that really tickled me and really made me actually walk a little bit taller was back when I was a first officer on a 757. One day I was going out to the airplane and we get on the bus and there's, everybody's going to fly wherever, and we're on the bus and we're going to the airplanes and it's just full of people and we're all laughing and joking and yapping and where you going? Oh, this is where I'm going. And I get to my airplane and I get off the bus and go fly. And the next time I am going to fly, the bus driver looks at me and he starts smiling. And I'm like, how you doing today? And he goes, I'm fine. How are you doing today? I go, I'm great. I'm great. And he says, can I tell you something? I'm like, sure. He said, the other day when we went to your airplane, when you got off the bus, he said, the fellas started talking about you. And I go, oh, what'd they say? He said, one person said, you know what? I've flown with her and she's really good. She's really good. She's sharp and she's funny and she can fly an airplane. Listen, whenever you take a check ride and you pass, you can fly an airplane, right? You can fly an airplane. But it was something special to have my peers say, that girl can fly.
Right.
That, in a way, changed me. I was not just 5'2". I was taller than 5'2". I walked around like, yep, I can fly an airplane. And some of them know I can fly an airplane.
But it's validation, right? After so much time being minimized.
Yes, exactly. I stayed in San Francisco for a long time. Then I left and went to Dulles during COVID. They shut down my airplane, and so I was off for a little while. And then I went back to flying, and then I went to Newark. And it was funny because they didn't know me on the East Coast. And the same thing would happen. I'd walk into operations, and people would stop talking. You could feel the eyes. They're watching you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, here we go again. But it didn't take long because not only did I just show up wearing this uniform, I was a captain. So it's like, I've already proven myself here, boys. I've already done it. I wouldn't be a captain. And it was not just a captain of a little bitty airplane. It was the captain of a big airplane.
And I love that, at United and in the commercial space, that's where you really were able to bloom and to thrive, right? And really make a path
Right.
for others.
Right. I think so. Our numbers are increasing.
They are. Slowly but surely they will be.
Yeah. Yes.
And through all this, right, you also have your life. You mentioned being in San Francisco, going back to Sacramento area, which is where your family was. You also were carrying responsibility with your family. Your brother Morris, who you've described as your person, Your relationship with your mother so close, your relationship with your brother the same. He was a champion weightlifter and someone known for his strength, his discipline, his presence. In 2010, he suffered a devastating stroke, which dramatically changed his body and his life. And your brother now required complex, round the clock care. And you, without hesitation, stepped into caregiving. And what an incredibly selfless act, right? It was no question, I'm going to take care of you. Was there ever a moment, though, because that is such an incredible amount of responsibility, where you felt like the weight was too heavy and you didn't feel allowed to say that out loud?
I don't think the weight was ever too heavy. It was daunting sometimes. And I think that the reason why it wasn't too heavy is because I was a caregiver, but the primary caregiver was my hero, my mother. Because I still went off and flew airplanes. Right? I still had my job, and my mother was there though 100% of the time. So my brother ended up being a quadriplegic, and he also could not speak. And so it was a full-time job. I'm very, very picky, and I demand excellence in everything, not only myself, but even the people that I deal with. And so once we brought my brother home and started caring for him ourselves, we went through a lot of nurses, because I'm like, you're not going to hurt my brother. You can't take care of him the way he should be taken care of, then you need to leave. And so my mother and I had already learned how to do everything when we took him home. We knew how to change a trach. We knew how to change a catheter. We knew how to do everything. And so that's what I expected from them also. My mother was the one who made that an easy, not physically easy, but an easy decision to care for him at home. And yeah, it was good. I don't have any regrets about it. Was I tired? Yeah. Did it take a toll on my mother and I both? Yeah. But that was my brother, right? What's
Yeah.
that song? He's my brother. He ain't heavy.
Yeah. I want to back up a little bit and talk about your family, your brother being your person and your mom being your best friend. Can you tell me about the dynamic that the three of you had?
We were pretty tight. I can remember I have another brother, but he's about, let's see, 5 years younger than me. I think he's 5 years younger than me. So there was a little bit of distance there, right? But the brother that passed away, Morris, the one who had the stroke, he was just 1 year younger than me. And we were just always tight. And he was genius, scored genius on IQ test. I never told him that he was smarter than me, but he was smarter than me. And he was an amazing athlete. I mean, he was student body president, right? I mean, he was really brilliant. We were just really tight. And so it was no question when he had his stroke that I was going to be there. Not a second thought about it.
And you did that, right? For almost a decade, you and your mom took care of him.
Yes. Yes.
Without hesitation, with full devotion.
Without hesitation. He was locked in, because he couldn't speak, but he could understand. And so we had our own little language. And he lived, like you said, almost 10 years. And people in that state generally do not live that long. There are many times that we were told, just, maybe you should just let him go. Like, let him go what? Let him go where? When the good Lord's ready for him, he'll go. We're not going to hasten it. One time my brother got pneumonia and we were at the hospital. And I remember we'd been in and out of the hospital a lot near the end there. For the first probably 9.5 years, my brother was golden at home. And then I went off, when I got trained, I went off on my IOE and my brother got sick. And we went back to the hospital. And I remember we were used to the people there at UC Davis. And so my mother and I felt comfortable that we could go home one night. Usually one of us would sleep in the room with him because he was always in intensive care because of his condition. And I came back the next morning and there were all these machines. My mother and I are both there. There's all these machines all over the room. And I'm like, what is going on here? And I just kind of looked and took notice of everything that was there. And I said to the nurse, I said, did you guys give my brother Bactrim, which was an antibiotic that was broad spectrum antibiotic. So before they find out what bug is making the person have pneumonia, right? Which bacteria they have, they give them a broad spectrum. And they had given him Bactrim. Well, my brother was allergic to Bactrim. And I said, did you give him Bactrim? And the nurse's eyes got really big. And she said, I'll be back. She went and got the doctor. And the doctor came in and sat there and he was looking at me. And first when he walks in, he tells all the technicians, thank you, we're done. And they all leave. And then he sits down and he looks at me and he says, what do you do? I go, what do you mean, what do I do? He goes, what do you do for a living? And I at first, I was taken aback and I just kind of looked at him. I'm thinking, why is he asking me this question? Is it because I'm here at the hospital? I was here yesterday and now I'm here today. It's like, I thought maybe he was trying to say, don't you work? And I said, I guess maybe I did kind of have a little chip then, right?
Right.
But
Of course.
I said, yeah. It's like, what kind of assumption is he making here? And I said, what do I do? And he goes, yeah, what do you do for work? And I said, I'm a pilot for a major airline. He goes, and he shook his head up and down and he smiles and he goes, that's what it is. And I go, that's what is. He said, the model that doctors use for problem solving is built off the aviation model of problem solving. He goes, that's why you walked in the room, you looked at all the machines that were here, you read the labels on the machines, and you went there and said, did you give him Bactrim? Because Bactrim can do things to make it look like your heart is having an issue. I believe it's called hyperkalemia. And I recognized it immediately. And he said, continue to advocate for your brother. Please continue to advocate for him. And you know what is really funny, because I thought at that moment, Theresa, this is why you're a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
This is why you're a pilot. So that years later, because there are no mistakes, you could care for your brother.
Mm-hmm.
You could understand what was going on with his care.
Right.
Yeah.
And you were his fiercest protector, and your mother was the backbone for both of you through it all. What did your mom carry for you without you even realizing it at the time? Because you carried all of that together.
She was the backbone. When I went off to fly my trips, my mother was there. She was there 24/7, unless I would frame my schedule. So like every 3 months or so, I would work almost nonstop so that I could have the end of the month off and the beginning of the next month off. So my mother could come home and spend 3 weeks here in Virginia. And I would do that probably every third month, just so that she could get some time to come back, check on her house and stuff. But other than that, my mother was always there.
Mm-hmm.
She was the one that was there with my brother. And so, we took turns. We took turns even who would have him for the night, right? We had baby monitor there and we could listen to him. We could hear him coughing. You know what that's like, right? Having a baby monitor so you can hear your baby crying or whatever. And so my little brother was my baby. So yeah, we took turns and we cared for him together. Yeah, my mother was amazing.
And how did you process that loss? Because that was such a huge part of your life for so long. And you still had to show up for work after that. You still had to fly. You still, needed to be support for your mom and still carried all of that. How did you navigate that grief?
He had lived 10 years after his stroke. And he was like, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Like I say, there are no mistakes, and things happen when they do for a reason. When my brother passed, it was during COVID, and United had decided we're parking the 757 and the 767 because, flying really went down. There wasn't a
Mm-hmm.
whole lot of flying.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, that was when people were laying off folks. They were being furloughed. And so once we rebid, I rebid into the 787 as a captain, but we just weren't training anyone. So I had about 9 months where I was at home with my mother and we would stare at each other. My brother was gone, but that's how we got through it. I don't think there are mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
It was just the timing. So by the time I went back, I'm not going to say I was totally there because I'm still not totally there, right? I still miss him.
Yeah.
But I had some grieving that I could get done while I was off.
And it takes time to grieve, right? I don't think we ever really get over the loss of our loved ones, but eventually the world changes, COVID subsides, and you get back to work and you continue to fly for the next 5 years. And in May 2024, right before you turn 65, you have your final flight on the 787 with you as the captain. And your mom is on this flight, your friends, your family are on board. And at this point in your life, the entire world is watching because this ends up becoming a media event that's covered by news outlets and social media around the world. This is something that United celebrated for you. After decades of being invisible, suddenly everybody's seeing you. What was that day like for you? And did you understand the level of recognition that that would bring?
I didn't understand totally. I knew that it was going to be covered. I did know that, but not in the way that it was. United celebrated, we had something at the gate before I left on the final flight, and the president of United Airlines was there. I had no idea he was going to be there, but he shows up and he starts talking and, bends down, and because everybody bends down when they talk to me, and whispered in my ear, Captain Claiborne, you're not going to get away. So he already kind of had plans that he wanted me to do something after retirement, but he just talked about my dedication and my mentorship and how proud he was to work with me. I actually work for him, but you know what I'm saying. And
Right. Exactly.
there's a lot about Bret Hart. I'm telling you, he was amazing. I'll never forget the first time I actually met him. We were on a Zoom call. There was a bunch of us on this call, and I had everybody introduce themselves to him. And I was the last person. At the time, I was president of Sisters of the Skies, and I was the last person to introduce myself. And he had already told us, call me Bret, right? That was what he said, call me Bret, which to me is like, okay, whatever. When he got to me, I said, I'm Theresa Claiborne, sir. You can call me Captain. And, everybody laughed. And of course I laughed too. And I said, I'm just kidding. And he said, I'm proud to call you Captain. So this is a man who I just thought was amazing. And he is amazing. But yeah, he was there at the celebration, and, I gave a little talk before we went to fly, and all the passengers were there, and everybody was happy, and they had cake and potato chips with my face on it, and it was amazing. And of course, the biggest thing was that my mama was there.
Mm-hmm.
My mom and my brother, and some of the people who were mentors to me were there. And then some of the Sisters of the Skies were there. Some actually flew on the trip to Lisbon and back. So it was absolutely amazing. And I chose Lisbon, and there was only two pilots on that. You generally, when you're going overseas like that, a lot of times you have three pilots, depending on the length of time of the flight. Lisbon at that time happened to be just two people, which most people, it goes pretty junior usually. And most people don't want to fly that. It's like they want a relief pilot. But I knew that would give me 2 days layover in Lisbon. And to me, this final flight was not for me. How many times have I done that? Many a time. that final flight was for my mother. And so I chose Lisbon, and it was amazing. We went there and we hung out for 2 days, and, we had a big dinner party. And the flight attendants, I invited all of them, and it was amazing. And then coming home was equally amazing. And they had a little gathering for me, and it was pretty good. And there was a lot of media, and that was kind of interesting. And I was a little surprised. I didn't realize it was going to get that much play. But I had people coming to me afterwards saying, "Oh my gosh, we just saw you on television and this and that." I'm like, "Oh wow, okay." And I still get people walking up to me in the airport going, "I know you. I know who
Yeah.
you are." It's kind of funny.
Is it strange now that that recognition has arrived, the fact that you are recognizable now, has that removed any of that weight, that burden that you carried, or has it made it visible to other people?
You know what? It's made it visible to other people, but some of that weight is off just because there are more young ladies that look like me
Mm,
doing it.
yeah.
And, I have so many people that I've mentored through the years. Not all one-on-one, but just who will reach out and say, "Thank you so much. You made it possible." And I don't think I actually made it possible. I just did my job. I did what I'm supposed to do. But if knowing that I did it made you walk a little bit taller and say, "If she can do it, I can do it," I'll take that.
And your impact to the aviation community is undoubted, even though it's probably strange for you to acknowledge that. But the summer that you retired, you end up getting a nomination to be inducted into the Hall of Fame for Women in Aviation International. And you thought, there's no way that I'm going to get this. But your mom, being your number one cheerleader, told you, I know you will. And then sadly, in October, your mom ends up passing away. And then just a few days after that, you get the news that you're selected as an inductee. Tell me about that.
It was bittersweet. Obviously, I wish that she had known it, but she did know it.
She knew it.
Yeah, she knew it. She told me, "Oh, you're in there." And I said, "Well, I've been nominated, Mom." And I wasn't just nominated by one person. I was nominated by a few people. So I don't know if women in aviation felt that, "Oh, we gotta let her have it because she's been in the news." I don't know. Um, Listen, I had already figured out too that I had made some inroads when the fighter chicks, and you were part of this, gave me my name. I was a tanker pilot, so we didn't have call signs.
Mm-hmm.
And you're Lilo, and I'm Alpha.
Mm-hmm.
And that name was given to me at the Wasp Museum. It was the anniversary of the first fighter pilots, right? Women fighter pilots. That was that anniversary. And so there's a lot of you guys there, and you guys gave me the name of Alpha. And honestly, I'll be honest with you, I did not, recognize that you guys held me in any kind of esteem, except for through one of my besties, Blaze, Caroline Blaze Jensen, who was number 3 in the Thunderbirds. I had been honored by OBAP, their Hall of Fame,
Mm-hmm.
but they're Black. So it was pretty special when women in aviation did it, but it was very special also when the fighter chicks named me Alpha, because now I had my call sign.
It's just such a massive ripple effect that you've had on so many people, right? And not just Black females, it's other women. It's any person in aviation. If they know, like it's been impactful for them. And now you're more recognizable than ever. And now you're more celebrated than ever. How are you coping with that level of recognition that you never really experienced before?
It's mostly good. It's mostly good. I say mostly good because when I go to a gathering, like let's say OBAP or Women in Aviation or any of the other conferences, I walk in and everybody wants their picture. I don't get very far. Like, everybody wants the swag. I want to go to the table and get the swag. I generally don't end up getting the swag. Except that now that I am an ambassador for United, I usually have a handler. And I can say to my handler, hey, can you get me I want that from that table and that. So I get swag again, which is good.
Yeah. Such a simple request. I just want a new pen.
Yes. Yeah, yes. But you know what? I take a lot of pride and pleasure out of the coffee mugs that I get when I go visit a college, the baseball caps when I go visit a college. I love that. I love that the young people know who I am and they want to learn.
And even though the recognition, I think, came late, is it still important for you?
It's important for me as long as it still does the same thing. Like, I don't ever want it to be that people say, like, oh, she thinks she's all that, because I don't. I'm just me. One of the greatest compliments I've ever had was from one of my high school friends who said, oh my gosh, Theresa, you're the same person that you were in high school. Because I am. I just happen to fly airplanes. I just happen to have been the first. But I'm still the same down-to-earth person who wants the best for everybody. And I want you to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And I realize that we all have it in us to do great things. So go get at it.
Mm-hmm.
Go get at it.
So, Theresa, I'm going to ask you, what is your truth now? Is carrying the weight a burden or is it a gift?
It's a gift. It was a burden, and it doesn't mean that it's not a burden sometimes, but it is a gift. It's a gift that you can give the world. It's a gift that we can give people who maybe did not have the opportunity, or the opportunity wasn't just automatically given to them, but they realize, whoa, I can do this. So I would say it's a gift.
And looking back now, which weight truly shaped you and which is the weight that depleted you? Because you have carried weight in so many different ways through your life.
I think being a first has been really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It has. It has, because I can remember as a child, because I used to be very, very talkative. All my report cards had I for self-control. And there was times when I wanted to be like the bad kid, right? I didn't want to be the smart kid.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be the bad kid so that I could just be free, just to be. But you always have to be on.
Mm-hmm.
You know what that's like. You always have to be on. That's kind of hard sometimes, but I think we still do it. We just do. That's probably the biggest way, being the first.
But looking back now, which weight were you never meant to carry by yourself that you felt like you did?
Ooh, probably that same weight, that same thing. Why can't people just look at somebody and let them do their job and receive them the way they do their job? Why do I have to walk around and say, I am qualified? Why do you have to say, I'm qualified? Why? We pass the same check rides. We do this. We do the same actions. Why can't it just be understood? Why can't we just walk into a room and everybody just assume, because that's the case, that person can do what they're here to do? Fly an airplane, get it from point A to point B safely. I shouldn't have to carry that. I shouldn't have had to carry that weight. I shouldn't have to still carry that weight. And I see people still having to carry that weight.
But to the young person who feels that they are shouldering so much, who feels whether it's the weight of responsibility or the weight of, caring about a family member, worrying about the finances, just feeling heavy, what do you say to that young person?
I really don't think that God gives us anything that we can't handle. He just doesn't. Some people do it more gracefully than others, but you can handle it. You can handle it. I tell these young people all the time, it's like every ride's not going to be a great ride. It's just not going to be. because that's not the way life is. It's not perfect. But you can handle it. You can do this. Just put your head down and get it done.
Mm-hmm. And do they have to carry it alone?
No, they don't have to carry it alone. We're all out there doing the same thing. One of my favorite sayings, and let me see if I can get it right. Martin Luther King. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But just keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Bing, bing, bing.
Well, Theresa, thank you for sharing your story with us and for teaching us that some weight is a burden, some weight is a legacy, and some of the weight we carry is both a privilege and an honor. Strength is not the absence of weight. It's the wisdom to know which weights we carry by choice and which ones we release. And thank you for trusting us with your story and for launching us into season 2 with such an extraordinary conversation. And to our listeners, if you're loving the podcast, leave us 5 stars wherever you listen. And if you're a true fan, take a minute to leave a written review on Apple Podcasts. It helps others find these conversations too. And don't forget to subscribe on Substack for bonus episodes and deep dives into what we discussed today. But before we sign off, I'm introducing a new segment called Truth Be Told. It's rapid fire questions with only 2 ways to answer, Theresa. It's either truth or lie. Are you ready?
I don't know. Okay, go ahead.
I made history.
Truth.
My story matters.
Truth.
I'm comfortable being seen now.
Truth.
I wish I was a little bit taller.
Truth.
Last one. I would do it all again.
Truth.
Theresa, thank you for being here. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for thinking that my story was important enough to tell. That's pretty special. Because I'm just me.